silence. Absolute silence. 66 million years ago, the sky split open, an asteroid struck, and the world plunged into darkness. The dinosaurs vanished. The giants that ruled the planet for 165 million years were wiped off the face of the Earth in a matter of years. Forests burned, oceans boiled, and the planet became a wasteland of ash and death. Imagine emerging from your shelter to find a world that was once teeming with life, suddenly empty. But, as we already know, nature abhors a vacuum. As the dust settled, those who miraculously survived this nightmare began to emerge from deep burrows and tight crevices. Small, furry, rat-sized mammals that had huddled in the shadows of giants for centuries. And these tiny heirs of the ash cautiously step into the light, breathing the air of a new, unknown world. As always, Dimitri is with you, and you're watching the World Before Our Era channel. Today, you'll discover how these tiny creatures shattered all evolutionary patterns over 60 million years. And we'll begin with the Paleocene epoch. The world slowly comes back to life, but it's unstable. Wind drives mists across scorched valleys. Mammals begin to grow. The Pantalambda appears, a clumsy creature the size of a sheep, and tiny primates hide in the trees. Purgatorius. They are no bigger than a squirrel, but their eyesight, grasping hands, and nimble paws are nature's first gambit in a grand game that will one day lead to the emergence of us. Yet for now, it's not mammals that stand at the top of the food chain. The throne left vacant by the tyrannosaurs was seized by those who, during the Mesozoic, hid in the treetops. Birds. Meet Gastornis, the true nightmare of the early Paleocene. Imagine a feathered giant, as tall as a human and weighing over 300 pounds. It has no wings for flight, but its powerful legs can carry its massive body at a sprinter's speed. However, the most terrifying aspect of its appearance is its head. An enormous, tall beak shaped like an axe. This bony instrument possessed monstrous power. It didn't just tear flesh, it crushed bones and turtle shells as easily as we crack nuts. Imagine a forest edge, early morning. Fog blankets the grass, muffling sounds. A herd of small hoofed animals, no bigger than dogs, grazes on young greenery. They are fast, but not cautious. One of them strays too far from the group. From the fern thicket, a massive silhouette silently emerges. Gastornis freezes, fixing its prey with a predator's cold gaze. A moment of tense silence, and then an explosion of movement. The bird lunges forward, the ground trembles beneath its feet. The hoofed animal spots the threat, tries to dodge, but it's too late. A downward strike with its beak, and the victim's skull shatters under the force of a living press. The bird bends over its prey, tearing the meat into huge chunks. For the small mammals, Gastornis became a living reminder. The dinosaurs are gone, but their feathered descendants still rule this land. Moving on to the Eocene epoch. From 56 to 34 million years ago, the planet transforms into a giant greenhouse. Temperatures rise. Tropical forests grow even in the Arctic. Humidity is high, jungles are dense, and food is abundant. It's the perfect time for evolutionary experiments. If you were there, the world would seem like a dream to you. Giant trees, lianas, unknown flowers, and the endless cries of animals in the canopy. Mammals explode in diversity. They fill every niche. Some become large herbivores, the size of modern horses and cows, while others become predators capable of tearing prey apart. A third group returns to the water, using the ocean as a new world of opportunities. In the trees, the first true primates appear. Darwinius, known as Ida, a small creature with opposable thumbs and enormous eyes. She leaps from branch to branch, hunting insects and gathering fruit. Her grasping hands and wrists are already very similar to ours. Her descendants will one day descend to Earth and begin to look not only around them, but also forward into the future. But the true wonders of evolution begin on land. Meet Andrewsarchus, the largest terrestrial carnivorous mammal of all time. 4 meters from nose to tail. A skull nearly a meter long. jaws more powerful than any modern wolf. This is an ungainly sprinter, much like a cheetah. It's a heavy, slow, but incredibly dangerous scavenger and hunter, capable of crushing the bones of prey the size of a cow. Imagine a watering hole in the scorching heat of the Eocene epoch. The air shimmers with heat, smelling of algae and decaying greenery. A herd of Uintatherium, massive 3-ton giants with 6 horns on their heads and long tusks, slowly enter the water. These were the true living tanks of their time. They seem invulnerable, but from the dense shadows of the coastal thickets, Andrewsarchus is already watching them. It doesn't resemble the predators we're accustomed to. It's a wolf in sheep's clothing. Its feet end in hooves, but its jaws can snap a log in half. Andrewsarchus is in no hurry. It won't chase its prey across the entire plain. It's too heavy for that. It waits for the perfect moment. One of the young male Uintatheres gets stuck in the viscous mud near the shore. This is the moment the predator has been waiting for. Andrewsarchus emerges from the shadows. Its steps are heavy. The ground slightly springs beneath its paws. The victim sees the threat, throws its head back, exposing its horns, and tries to pull itself out of the mud, but its immense weight drags it down. Escape is impossible. Instead of an elegant leap, the predator charges. It crashes into the Uintathere's side, using its mass like a battering ram, and knocks it over. Its almost meter-long head, made of solid muscle and bone, clamps down on the victim's nape. A chilling, dry crunch is heard. These are the predator's teeth, working like a hydraulic press, crushing the giant's cervical vertebrae. The struggle subsides as quickly as it began. The role of theropods was officially taken over by mammals. But while some mammals were learning to run through the forests, others embarked on the strangest act in the history of life. They decided to return to the ocean. Just imagine, your ancestors spent hundreds of millions of years to crawl onto land, learn to breathe air, and walk on 4 legs. And then, suddenly, a 180-degree turn. Why would furry, warm-blooded creatures return to the cold abyss? The answer is simple: freedom. After the disappearance of the former masters of the seas, vast pastures and fish-filled bays were left unclaimed. The ocean became a buffet. Mammals couldn't miss such an opportunity. Meet Ambulocetus. In translation, this means walking whale, and this name describes it perfectly. Imagine a 3-meter creature resembling a nightmarish cross between an otter and a crocodile. Its body is covered in thick fur, its paws are short and powerful, with webbing between the toes, and its snout is elongated into a long, toothy beak. It's a biological paradox. It still breathes air and most likely sleeps on the shore, but it hunts exclusively in the water. A murky mangrove swamp. The tea-colored water conceals everything deeper than 10 centimeters. A small hoofed animal comes to the shore to quench its thirst. The creature is extremely cautious. It scans the bushes, listening to the rustling of the forest. But the threat isn't in the forest. The threat lies beneath the mirror-like surface of the water. A burst of spray. The silence of the swamp is shattered by a roar and a splash. Ambulocetus lunges from the water, its jaws, studded with sharp teeth, clamping in a death grip onto the victim's snout. The hoofed animal tries to break free. It kicks at the predator's back with its hooves, but it's all in vain. Ambulocetus simply backs away, dragging its prey into the depths. A few seconds of desperate struggle, a chain of air bubbles, and silence once again reigns on the surface. For evolution, there is no delete button, only modify and reuse. It's hard to believe, but this very toothy, furry semi-crocodile is the direct ancestor of the blue whale. Several million years will pass, its paws will become flippers, its fur will disappear, and its body will reach the size of a ship. But it all began here, with the first risky step back into the water. The Eocene warmth is ending. The Oligocene is beginning. Antarctica becomes covered in ice, and jungles are replaced by savannas. Chaos opens doors for new heroes. Meet Entelodon, the hell pig. 2 meters at the shoulder, a head with bony growths, jaws like a hyena. This is an omnivorous monster that doesn't just eat everything, it also knows how to work in a pack. But even in this harsh world, there were their own gods. Meet the Paraceratherium, also known as Indricotherium, the largest land mammal to have ever walked the earth. Imagine a living skyscraper of flesh and bone, standing 5 meters tall at the shoulder, with a long, giraffe-like neck and a massive body weighing 20 tons. Next to it, a modern African elephant would look like a mere teenager. Indricotheres were so enormous that adult individuals had virtually no natural predators. One might think such a mountain of muscle would grant eternal immortality. But nature always finds a way to level the playing field. Oligocene, the peak of the dry season. The air shimmers with heat. Dust collects in the folds of its skin, and every step is an effort. An old male, parched with thirst, begins to fall behind the herd. His movements are sluggish, his breathing heavy. He is an easy target for those who know no fear. From the tall, scorched grass, they emerge silently. Entelodonts. They weren't called hell pigs for nothing. These are 2-meter-tall monsters with faces straight out of nightmares. Bony growths on their cheekbones, jaws capable of grinding bones to dust, and tiny, rage-filled eyes. They aren't going to attack head-on. That would be suicide. They have a different strategy: teamwork. 6 hell pigs surround the giant, keeping a safe distance. The moment the titan turns away, one of the predators makes a swift lunge, tearing a chunk of flesh from the giant's leg, then immediately springs back. The Indricothere tries to turn, to strike with its massive leg, but it's too slow. Another pig immediately latches onto its side. This is the tactic of 1,000 cuts. Hour after hour, the pack methodically wears down its prey. Dust rises in a cloud, mingling with the scent of blood. The giant weakens, its head drooping lower and lower. Finally, its bones, unable to bear the weight of its own body and the blood loss, give way. The ground trembles as 20 tons of living weight collapse into the dust. Silence returns to the savanna, broken only by the triumphant squeals of the pack. In this new world, strategy, patience, and numbers triumphed over sheer mass. Evolution proved once again, size matters, but intelligence and coordinated pack work are weapons of an entirely different caliber. The world is becoming faster, quieter, and much deadlier. Clumsy giants are replaced by masters of stealth. Meet Eusmelus. This isn't quite a cat in the modern sense, but its formidable prototype from the Nimravidae family. It was the size of a small leopard, but its main adornment and weapon were 2 long, serrated, saber-like fangs. Eusmelus didn't pursue its prey for miles. It was the king of the ambush. Its flexible and muscular body allowed it to literally melt into the dry grass. It was at this time that our distant primate ancestors found themselves at a crossroads. The forests, which had been their home and fortress for millions of years, continued to disappear. The savanna was encroaching, and to survive, they had to venture into the open. But here, the old rules no longer applied. In the tall grass swaying in the wind, you wouldn't see a Eusmelus until its fangs were at your neck. On all fours, a primate's world was limited to just a few meters around them. Imagine a group of early primates foraging along the edge of the savanna, searching for fruit trees. The wind carries a strange scent, and somewhere nearby, a twig snaps almost imperceptibly. Animal instinct screams danger, but the tall golden grass conceals the predator. At this critical moment, one of our ancestors does something that will forever change history. He straightens up. He stands on his hind legs, balancing and straining his neck as much as possible. His gaze rises above the level of the grass for the first time, sweeping across the horizon. And there, a couple of dozen meters away, he sees a barely perceptible movement. A reddish patch and the glint of saber-like fangs. The Eusmelus freezes. Its ambush is revealed. One short, piercing cry, and the entire group of primates instantly scrambles up the nearest tree. Today, the predator is left with nothing. But this accidental moment, when a primate stood on its feet simply to see its enemy, became the spark from which the flame of human civilization would later ignite. Free hands and a gaze fixed on the distance proved more effective than any claws. By the end of the Paleogene, the world had transformed beyond recognition. Mammals, which 40 million years ago were the size of a rat, were now giants, predators, masters of survival. They conquered the land, returned to the oceans, and mastered the skies. Bats had long patrolled the night sky, snatching insects in the darkness. The Paleogene demonstrated their incredible adaptability. They were flexible, rapid in their evolution, and incredibly diverse. Where dinosaurs needed hundreds of millions of years, mammals took only a few tens of millions to evolve from a mouse-sized creature to a 20-ton titan. But the climate continued to change. Savannas expanded, covering Africa, Eurasia, and both Americas. Grassy plains demanded new strategies. Predators had to be even faster, herbivores even more resilient. Herds, migrations, and complex social structures emerged. The world increasingly resembled an arena where only those who could play the long game survived. And somewhere on the fringes of the African savannas, in the shade of acacia trees, the first primates began to stand upright. They were still small, weak, and inconspicuous. They cautiously rose onto their hind legs to peer over the tall grass and spot a predator before it could sneak up. Late evening, the African savanna. The sun faded in the sky and the air grew cool. At the foot of a tree sat a small ape-like creature. It clutched a stick, playing with it, unaware that it held the prototype of future weapons and tools. Around it was a world of saber-toothed predators and giant beasts. But this awkward bipedal observer would one day become the planet's most dangerous predator. Its journey would begin in the next epoch. The Paleogene was ending. The world of mammals stood on the threshold of a new era. Ahead lay the Neogene, an epoch when evolution would create the most perfect predators in history. Saber-toothed tigers, cave lions, giant sloths, and the terror birds of South America. And at the center of all this chaos, a creature that would learn not only to survive, but also to reshape the surrounding world to its will. The world of the Paleogene was left behind. Giants of the past, like the 20-ton Indricotheres, faded into the shadows of history. The planet continued to cool, and where evergreen jungles once rustled, now swayed an endless sea of grass. Grass was a quiet and relentless revolutionary. At first glance, it seemed like easy prey, but that was an illusion. Its leaves were impregnated with microscopic silica crystals, turning each plant into biological sandpaper. Grass wore teeth down to dust, condemning the unprepared to starve to death. The Neogene dictated new, harsh rules. The savanna was an open arena where hiding in dense thickets was no longer possible. Now, to survive, mammals had to transform their jaws into powerful grinding mills, capable of pulverizing glassy greens for hours, or turn their bodies into perfect biological engines, ready for an endless marathon across scorching plains. In this new world, it wasn't the strongest who won, but the most enduring. 20 million years ago, the plains transformed into an endless stadium where losing the race meant instant death. To conquer the abrasive grass, mammals resorted to radical measures. Meet Merychippus. This was one of the most important ancestors of the modern horse. Merychippus no longer hid in the forests. Its body was a triumph of Neogene engineering. Its teeth became high-crowned and tough, capable of grinding silica-rich grass for decades. But most importantly, its legs. Its side toes began to atrophy, giving way to a powerful central hoof. This allowed Merychippus to turn running into an endless marathon. It became the savanna's first professional sprinter, capable of galloping across the hard ground for hours without tiring. But where an ideal runner emerges, evolution inevitably creates an ideal pursuer. From the shadow of sparse trees, a Machairodus watched the herd. This was no ordinary cat. It was one of the first true saber-toothed tigers in history, nearly 3 meters long and 200 kilograms of pure muscle. Machairodus had no intention of chasing horses across the entire prairie. It knew it would lose a marathon. His strategy is one of surgical precision. Imagine a sun-scorched plain. The air shimmers with the intense heat. A herd of Merychippus nervously lifts its head, sensing the scent of dust. The wind blows in their direction, masking the enemy's presence. The Machairodus is frozen still a few dozen meters away, blending in with the color of the dry grass. He is a master of ambush. A short, explosive lunge, and the predator finds itself in the very center of the herd. It doesn't bite indiscriminately. Its objective is a single, decisive strike. Powerful forelegs pin the foal to the ground, and in the next instant, 20-centimeter saber-like fangs pierce precisely into the arteries of the neck. No prolonged struggle, just the quiet gasp of the victim and the smell of blood. The herd gallops away into the distance, and the predator begins its meal. While cats and horses compete in the art of killing and escaping, our ancestors in Africa continue their quiet experiment. They still seem weak and defenseless, but they have already mastered the key skill of the Neogene era. They know how to wait. They observe these skirmishes from their hiding places and learn to understand the rules by which this new, ruthless land operates. While cats and horses in the north honed their running skills, South America remained a lost world. Cut off from the rest of the planet by the ocean, it transformed into a gigantic island sanctuary. There were no lions, bears, or wolves here. In this quiet isolation, the throne of predators was occupied by those who, in the rest of the world, had long since ceded ground to mammals. While birds on other continents escaped toothy beasts by flying into the clouds, here, in isolation, they decided to seek revenge. In South America, evolution seemed to turn back time. Birds abandoned the sky to once again become what their ancestors were, bipedal masters of the land. Meet the Phorus rhacos, the terror bird. Imagine a 2-meter-tall athlete with powerful runner's legs and a head the size of a horse's. Its beak is a massive, horny axe with a sharp hook at the end. In South America, it simply had no rivals. For millions of years, Phorus rhacos was an absolute monarch, knowing no enemies capable of challenging it. It was the perfect solitary killer in a world that stood still. Everything changed 3 million years ago when tectonic plates converged and the Isthmus of Panama rose from the ocean. This narrow strip of land became a bridge over which legions of northern predators, saber-toothed cats, wolves, and bears, poured south. This was not just a clash of species, it was a war between two philosophies of survival. The terror birds had ruled for centuries through the absolute power of a single lunge and a beak strike. But the mammals from the north brought with them team discipline. Where the southern monster relied on the brute force of a lone individual, the northern newcomer employed cold calculation, endurance, and pack intelligence. The old rules of survival broke down. The feathered tyrants, accustomed to being the sole masters, lost the war of systems. It turned out that even the most powerful axebeak was helpless against the coordinated effort of a pack that neither feared nor retreated. The southern stronghold collapsed, proving that in evolution, victory goes not to the most formidable, but to those who can adapt to a new, complex reality. And while ancient bird empires crumbled on the American continents, our ancestors in Africa continued their journey. They were still smaller than a saber-toothed cat and weaker than a terror bird, but they had already begun to master the very weapon that doomed the feathered giants of the South: mutual aid and the ability to act as a single unit. Finding themselves in the open savanna, they took a step that changed everything. They entrusted their lives to 2 feet. This was not yet the proud and upright posture of modern humans. Their gait was still a bit clumsy, and their hands still remembered the grip of strong branches. But their spine had already defied gravity. Standing almost fully upright, these creatures gained not only a vantage point over the tall grass, but also something invaluable: free hands. While the world around them grew in mass and fangs, our ancestors gained the chance to pick up the first tool in history, and this choice would ultimately prove more dangerous than any claws. We are approaching the finale of the Neogene. The climate is growing harsher, droughts are longer, but nature seems to have decided to stage a farewell parade of giants before the onset of the Ice Age. Enter Arctodus, the short-faced bear, the largest terrestrial predator of its time. When it stood on its hind legs, it reached a height of 4 meters. This was a running bear, a long-legged athlete capable of reaching speeds of up to 60 kilometers per hour. It didn't hide in berry bushes. It was the master of the plains, before whom even wolf packs retreated. And in the forests and river floodplains roamed the Megatherium, a giant ground sloth weighing 4 tons, an enormous creature with scythe-like claws, capable of defending itself even against a pack of saber-toothed tigers. Imagine the scene, a suffocating Pliocene afternoon. The river slowly carries its murky waters, and the air hangs heavy with the smell of damp grass and danger. A group of Smilodons, the legendary saber-toothed cats, surrounds a young Megatherium. The giant sloth, weighing almost 4 tons, seems like an unwieldy mountain of meat, but this is a dangerous illusion. The Megatherium is a 4-ton tank. Beneath its thick hide are bundles of muscles as dense as ropes, and its bones are as strong as steel beams. One of the Smilodons, intoxicated by the thirst for blood, decides to attack. It leaps into the air, aiming for the victim's throat. But at that moment, the sloth does something the predator didn't expect. Leaning on its massive tail, the Megatherium swiftly stands on its hind legs, transforming into a living tower almost 5 meters tall. It towers over the cats, literally blocking out the sun. One lightning-fast swipe of a paw with 30-centimeter claws, and the silence is shattered by the sound of tearing flesh. The Smilodon doesn't even manage to touch its target. The claws rip open its belly mid-flight, flinging the mutilated body of the predator onto the rocks. The other cats freeze. Their primal instinct screams of danger. The formidable hunters back away, realizing that before them is not prey, but death. But at that moment, from the shadows of the trees, emerges one who fears no one. Arctidus, the giant short-faced bear. He has no intention of fighting an enraged sloth. Arctidus is a pragmatist. He decides to claim what's left of the unlucky hunter, while the Smilodons ignominiously retreat, abandoning their wounded kin. The 1-ton bear approaches the still-living cat. In this brutal world, there is no place for pity. Today, the apex predator itself will become a caloric meal for the master of the plains. The bear tears apart the carcass, easily crushing ribs, but leaves the largest bones untouched, the massive, blood-soaked shin bones. There's too little meat in them to expend effort. Look over there. There, in the shade of the thorny acacias, holding her breath, she watches this scene. Her name is Lucy. She is just over 1 meter tall, no taller than a modern child. She has neither saber teeth nor armor, nor 4 tons of weight. In this world of giants, she seems like mere evolutionary background noise, an easy snack for any predator. But it is within her that the future of our planet now pulses. Arctidus departs, and other scavengers rush to the remains of the feast. They wander around helplessly, unable to break through the bony armor. Lucy's tribe is here too. One of the males desperately tries to gnaw at a joint, but only senselessly breaks his teeth. The tribe is ready to retreat, admitting defeat before the dead bone. But Lucy freezes. Her gaze falls on a small fragment that Arctidus accidentally crushed with its monstrous paw. Through the crack, she sees something fatty and glistening. Lucy's memory holds this scent. She had found such fragments before, left by hyenas. Inside was hidden the savanna's most nutritious delicacy. But how to extract it from an intact, armored bone? In her mind, 2 distant points. The weight of the stone underfoot and the fragility of the bone suddenly connect into a single, logical chain. She kneels and picks up a river stone. Heavy, cold, unremarkable. Lucy raises her arm. A strike. A dry sound shatters the silence. The bone cracks, revealing the treasure. At this moment, something more significant than all the battles of giants occurs. For the first time in history, a predator was outsmarted by a tool. Lucy extracts the bone marrow and shares it with her kin. She doesn't know yet that this stone in her hand is the precursor to a future sword, that this spark of ingenuity will, millions of years later, transform into the tamed flame of campfires, and that her descendants will one day emerge from the shadow of these acacias to forever rewrite the rules of life on Earth. While the giants of the Neogene honed their fangs, Lucy began to refine the world around her. The Neogene period is drawing to a close. Temperatures continue to drop. The vast savannas, once home to creatures like the Mylodon and the giant sloth, are beginning to freeze. The world of monstrous creatures stands on the brink, oblivious that their time has run out. Ahead lies the Pleistocene, an epoch of ice and mammoths. A time when nature will administer its final test of survival, and those who once seemed weak will prove to be the most formidable creatures Earth has ever seen. Take care, and remember, it's not those with the biggest fangs who win, but those who adapt first. Until next time.